If you are interested in starting your own podcast, we use Buzzsprout because it is simple and easy to use. Buzzsprout can get your show listed on every major platform while giving you the resources for a great podcast website, audio players that can drop into other websites, detailed analytics to see how people are listening to your podcast, and tools to promote your episodes. Podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners, and that is why over 100,000 podcasters are already subscribed to Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world. Following the link in our episode descriptions lets Buzzsprout know that we sent you. So in return, you will receive a $20 Amazon gift card from Buzzsprout while signing up for a paid plan. Most importantly, every subscription through our link is always appreciated and helps support our show so we can continue delivering the quality content that you guys listen to. That being said, back to the show.
Hello, and welcome to Comic Book Junkies. I'm Andrew,
This is Joe.
and this time, yet another list. But this time around, we're going to go through and we're going to discuss some of our pull list books over the years. We've kind of discussed our pull list and, what books are good, what we've been reading across the years of the pod now. But this is more so a comprehensive kind of combined list as we've done in the past, but of the books that we've read since we started collecting new books. So, this is runs we've collected from our pull list, stuff like that, not anything that's classic or any of our other stories we reviewed. Just kind of what we've been personally reading over the years. But before we get into it, what's up, Joe?
Not too much, not too much. Haven't been buying a lot of big key issues. I did pick up that Fantastic Four annual, the first, or is it an annual, a giant size? I don't know, but
Yeah.
the first Annihilus, also the first Ben Franklin on my staycation. So that
Ben
was,
Franklin?
I did say Ben Franklin, didn't I?
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah, first Ben Franklin. Heard it here
Yeah.
first. Yeah, if you want
That's
a
that shit.
copy, a big Benjamin, you get that Fantastic Four key. But yeah, no, things have been pretty good. Some quick shout outs before we get into our top 10 list. I'll save one for later, one of the shout outs, because I
Okay.
think Burger's gonna talk about it later. But one of my shout outs is I didn't put any indie books on my top 10 list. I don't collect a
Good.
lot of indie, so it is what it is. But for what it's worth, between me collecting from 2011 till now, Fade Out was really good. It's the guy that wrote that Captain America,
Brubaker?
Winter Soldier. Yeah, Brubaker, excellent, really good writing. It's really good if you like noir type genre.
Noir?
Yeah, so big fan of that. And then I don't know if it would hit the same or if I would enjoy it, but I know I enjoyed it back then. Wicked and Divine was really good. It
Oh,
fell off, and so I dropped it before it actually ended. But I remember reading that up until like the end of the 20s. So at
mm,
that time, I enjoyed that book.
yeah. Soft tip shark. That didn't even cross my mind.
You collected though too.
Yeah, I don't know how far I really got. I think I probably did like a dozen and then I was like, nah,
Yeah,
I don't know.
but guilty nonetheless.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I put my toes in the pool.
Yeah. So there was some draw at some point in time in our lives.
Yeah, we can explain it.
Yeah. But that's it.
Yeah.
But let's get into it.
Cool. Yeah, and just as a note for anybody else, I'm getting over a head cold. So if you hear me coughing or like choking on my own mucus, like that's why, dog. It's fucking disgusting.
You're not giving jobs.
No, I'm not. I don't read Wicked and Divine.
Good one.
But
I mean, you
you
did for 10 issues.
you did longer. So
All right,
shoot.
let's get into it.
All right, dog. So we have a lot of the same books on our list. So they kind of overlap. They're kind of in different ranges for the two of us, just as a heads up. Kind of working off of the list I drafted up. So, I might rate it a little bit lower than Joe would in terms of, the grand scheme of things, but we're kind of just going to work through the list and kind of discuss the books. Maybe Joe's got some extra ones that I didn't have. I think I only put 9 on my top 10 because I guess I didn't feel too strongly about all the books I've read over the years. But these are the ones that we're into. So, do we want to start from the very top or we kind of want to work from the bottom of my list, I guess?
Let's work from the bottom.
That probably makes more sense. We're Wicked and Divine fans. But
That should be
okay.
a
Yeah,
or
dude. Running bit. Yeah, we're Wicked and Divine fans here. But number one, well, not number one, I guess number 10 for me is Batman New 52 by Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo. I'll explain why it's so low on my list, even though it's probably one of the more prolific runs of this time period. And that's because I joined reading comics 2, 3 years after Joe. So New 52 was already popping off, probably 20, 30 issues deep at that point. So I wasn't there to get on the beginning, and the beginning was the best part of that run, in my opinion. But nonetheless, it was good when I read it. And it was the best thing in that time period, really. So that's why I put it on there. I mean, it's like a good standalone on its own. Like, there's no real weak part, despite it. I mean, not really despite anything. I mean, for being a new 52 title, I mean, there were a lot of good ones at the front, and then there were a lot of bad titles. But this one was like the strongest one all the way through. And I feel like it deserves its respect for that.
Yeah, that's fair. I missed the middle of this actually. So I started collecting when the new 52 came out because that was like a jumping on point for new readers. And Batman was one of the like three titles I was collecting back then, or four or five, I don't know, like one of the few titles. And I collected the first 11 issues, and I remember it being so good, but at the same time, I guess I didn't realize how good it was. But I knew it was something because like that was the whole Court of Owls thing, and now you see them everywhere. So I just remember every time picking up this book, it was like the thing I looked forward to the most. Like as far as like reading when I would get home, and I can't say the same
Yeah,
thing for all of Scott Snyder's work because I'm not like a
no.
really big fan of anything else, but this was like the perfect storm of like him being like an up and coming writer and Greg Capullo like killing artwork. And I don't know, like this series constantly had me like thinking about like where they were going to take the direction of the series. So they did a really good job with like the detective stuff, but it was like the perfect like blend of like honoring like classic Batman stuff while also building on the mythos. And like I said, I quit collecting comics for a little bit, but then I jumped back on, and I think I read the last two story arcs. And although it wasn't Court of Owls good, it was still really good. And it just to start strong and to finish a title strong is impressive in itself, especially because it went like 50 issues. So yeah, this was a lot higher on my list. I actually had it at two.
Yeah, I figured you'd have it higher since you had a bit more exposure to it and actually got to read more of it as it came out. I was a late adopter.
Well, I
But
guess with
another,
that said, unless you got more to talk on Batman.
no, sir.
Okay. I'll give you my number 10, which was Amazing Spider-Man, the 2014 series with Dan Slott. I think that took place right after the Superior Spider-Man stuff. And although I have issues one and two, I never had it on my poll, so I can't really speak to it. But a lot of pretty important things going on at this time in like Spider-Man comics. I know they introduced Silk really early in this series. It
Oh,
was one of the best comic book takes on the Spider-Verse. So I guess for what it's worth, I appreciate that. Wouldn't be surprised if like the animated movies that are out now kind of borrowed aspects of this run. And although she didn't the first appearance wasn't in this title, they're also introducing like Spider-Gwen at this time too. So just some significant things going on in Spider Comics.
yeah. I mean, they're already hammering the Spider-Verse in the animated film. So, I mean, this shit's already popping off. But yeah, I mean, the whole Spider-Gwen fad. I mean, I wonder if we'll see Morlun and the Inheritors or whatever the hell their name were, the energy vampire dudes who eat spider totems. I mean, that's the only thing they're really missing from the movies right now, if they wanted to go full Dan Slott Spider-Verse. But at the time, it was like really cool. I mean, if you listen to us now, we're like curmudgeons. We don't really like the multiverse. We could tell them to go shove it. But as it was coming out, it was sweet. I was really looking forward to it. I wasn't getting like tie-ins and anything, but everything in the book was like cohesive. There wasn't any part that was really like a lull. I don't know, it was just good reading. And I mean, that was probably shortly before I stopped reading Spider-Man even because it's been a good while now since I've picked up the main title, and I know that I had that whole run.
In fact, it was not as good as Batman, but I think this is when I kind of restarted collecting about this time too, because there was like a break in 2012, 2013. So I kind of had that
Uh,
same effect where I was just like, yeah, I can't wait to read this when I get home.
Hell yeah. Yeah, that was right around where mine was. Well, mine was like number 8 or 7 or something on my like 9 book list. Mine's pretty arbitrary. But another one I had ranked close to that was Multiversity by Grant Morrison and like a billion other artists. It was like a mini. I think there were what, like 6 to 8 of them or something like that. They were each kind of like a one shot for the most part, kind of going across the multiverses, like kind of almost like a guidebook, giving you insight as to like different worlds of like the 52 Earths at the time. And there was like the weird like teen one where they were all like what, like celebrity type deal. There was one where was that German Superman or something like that? Because I remember Hitler being on the toilet in one of the issues. And then there was a really cool Thunderworld one, which obviously like appealed to me since that was like the old Fawcett take on Captain Marvel. So that was cool. But I mean, it's something that they kind of abandoned since like the overarching like villains of that never ended up really being much. And the new 52 ended up getting canned for the good of everything, really. But if they were going to continue with that, this was really sweet. And I feel like it stands on its own since it's not really tied to any continuity.
Yeah, there were a lot of different one-off stories, and some were better than others. I really did like that Shazam one, and I'm not even the Shazam guy between the two of us. And it kind of was another confusing event like every other event, but what kind of stood out is that it was like one of the most creative events I think I've ever read. So Morrison can be really hit or miss with stuff like this, and for all things considered, I think this one landed considering like it was fun and you didn't really know what you were going to get issue to issue.
Agreed.
Well, I guess going, a little lower on my list, something a little more recent, the Robin series in 2021 with Joshua Williamson.
Hell
Kind of
yeah.
reminded me of like the animated Teen Titans series, but just like a little more like mature. The art
Yeah.
also made it feel less old school in a good way, which kind of matched the energy of the writing really well. So I don't know, just
Yeah.
something kind of fun and what I want Damian Wayne to kind of look like in comics. Not physically, but just like the personality and the type of I guess adventures you would find reading a comic book titled Just Robin.
Yeah. Specifically designed. If he didn't look like that, Joe was gonna be pissed. He told me it was gonna be on the chopping block if they changed anything. Just kidding. He's looking at me all weird right now. That was a bad bit. But no, I tend to agree with you. I mean, it was everything you wanted in a Robin book, in my opinion. I know there's probably Tim Drake nerds out there who are like, yo, Tim Drake solo series back in the day, that's my shit. No, no thanks. Just being dismissive right now. But this is where it's at. I mean, we both like Damien. I mean, if it's not Dick Grayson, we're Damien guys. And yeah, it had good energy. Like I liked the book. Like it had a good pace. I really liked the tournament like arc at the beginning. I mean, we're suckers for tournament arcs. Shout out Yu Yu Hakusho. But
Shout out.
you know what I mean though? Like they introduced what's her face?
Oh, Flatline.
Flatline.
Yeah.
Yeah. Flatline, and they brought back Connor Hawk, and they brought in a bunch of cool characters. They're fighting on Lazarus Island. Like it was all very like grounded, but at the same time just like comic booky enough to make it interesting. And had a bunch of cool subplots. I don't know. I really liked the book. Disappointed it ended.
Same. But I guess I mean I would keep reading it if it kept coming out, but it's hard to take a character like that who's not even like a Batman or a Superman and make it last 50 issues. So for the sample size we got, it was good. Your turn.
Oh, okie dokie. I'm gonna go with Moon Knight. This got to be back in what, 2013, 14. It's the Jeff Lemire run. So this is kind of part of what got me into Moon Knight. So this was early when I was a collector, didn't really know what I liked, didn't really know what I wanted to read. I think Marvel Now was the new initiative, which was good for me since I was a newbie. And then this came out. It was they're kind of like self-contained stories. They kind of really got into the mental aspect of things, but also kept it like street level and just kind of badass at the same time. It was kind of a good balance. And it kind of sold me on, what I wanted books to look like and how they would read without being too wordy or without being like, without having any action going on, what have you. And it was just a really good blend for someone who, didn't know much about comic books or like what ongoings were good at the time. So it kind of got me hooked, and now I'm a big Moon Knight guy.
Heck yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't read that one, so I can't speak to it. But to sub in a book that's not on Berger's list, Miracle Man back in 2014, Alan Moore. This was kind of my introduction to Alan Moore's writing. as well as my introduction to Miracle Man as a character. And just like Moore's other stuff, it really challenged how I viewed the comic book medium as like a vessel for like good writing. Definitely more of a mature read, but worth reading. And it was refreshing in the sense that it was really offbeat for something that would have came from the big two being Marvel or DC.
Miracle Man is just Shazam for British people. Moving on, higher up my list is House of X and Powers of 10, which is apparently how that's called, even though it's Powers of X. But I remembered some fucking schmoes telling me it's Powers of 10, which I don't know. Is that like 10 Moira McTaggart lives or some bullshit? I don't know or care. Look, it's a House of X and Powers of X, and it's not manga, it's manga. We do things our own way here.
Sometimes we got to stand on business and get you nerds to come out of your shell a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, like a Ninja Turtle would. But this was good. I mean, we didn't know what the hell we were getting into with Hickman and all of his whatever, because brother likes to make up languages and fucking make graphs and charts that can't comprehend. But when he's not doing that, he's writing really good stuff.
He thinks he's a part of the Shire.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. He went to NASA and now he's writing comics. But I don't know. It's cool. I thought like the concept was good. It ushered in that Krakoa era, which was actually like refreshing. Professor X could use his legs. Nobody could really die. Very interesting stuff because we know X-Men love dying and we know Professor X hates using his legs. So like this was very refreshing. People came out of their shell. Magneto wasn't being a dick for 5 minutes. Apocalypse was cool. Moira McTaggart was like made useful and like had powers apparently. It was a very just interesting concept and refresh, and like the mini itself was better than like the ongoings that came after it, in my opinion. But this was a really strong start and got me hooked for sure.
For sure. Being an X-Men fan, this is huge. Although, to your point, nothing really great came after this event. It did set the frameworks for what it could have been like the new era of X-Men. And people might argue that it is, but definitely not as revolutionary as like what the giant size X-Men were able to accomplish, but possibly the closest thing since then, which is kind of cool and fun. So yeah,
Agreed.
really good mini series, 6 issues a piece. So highly recommend, and I also highly recommend you don't read anything afterwards and just kind of be like, oh, like the places they could take that are cool.
Yeah, just completely just disregard everything else and be like, I wonder what could happen. And then just fill in your own blanks.
Yeah, that's that's exactly what I would recommend.
Yeah, like literally just Professor X doing cartwheels is probably better than what actually happened. Anywho,
Honestly, yeah. Well, I guess going into another book on my list, Justice League from 2011. So, truthfully, did not start reading this until the last story arc. So, it could
same.
be hot garbage for all I know, but that last arc was awesome. It's what events in comic books should look like. Every time they do a DC comic event, they can't figure it out, but like what they were able to accomplish in that like 10-ish issues is ideal because it had everything you needed. Like the art was great, Darkseid was badass, one of the best modern versions of the Justice League, and I'm glad that it was like a well-written team book.
Yeah, I agree. I also came on kind of late to it, I think, for the last arc as well, just based off of how badass it looked. Introduced Darkseid's daughter. I mean, yeah, you said the art. The art was a big draw for me. Jason Fabok's sweet. I mean, he's still working with Jeff Johns on their new indie stuff, which I won't read on principle. But, this is a good book. It was, there's a lot of stakes. It was pretty badass the whole time. But I will say that the beginning of this run, when it was new fit, well, earlier, I mean, was it? It was Johns all the way through, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was
Yeah, it
John's all
was.
the way through. I think, and this was before I started reading. I think Jim Lee started on pencils, but then
Probably.
Fabe took it over.
I don't know. But either way, he did end up making the Shazamily in this shit, and that annoys me. So I wish he didn't do that. But other than that, like the ending was sweet. I can't vouch for the beginning.
Word.
But to move up my list, we've got Superman volume, who fucking knows, with Gleason and Tomasi.
The 2016 run.
Yeah. I put this on here just because I mean nothing really that notable happened. This was just like a good father-son team up book kind of. It was Superman teaching his once normal son how to grow up and like be a superhero, and it was very wholesome. And I think that's the main reason I like it is because it was super wholesome and not very consequential. Nothing was earth-shattering, but like that was okay. They just kind of had like fun little 1, 2 issue stories, dealing with Frankenstein and fighting like sea creatures and shit. So, I mean, it wasn't anything crazy. I don't think you're going to see the highs of maybe some other runs, but it was like very consistent and it was like there in a time where I felt like Superman wasn't good for a while. And it kind of reinforced how much I like Superman, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much took the words out of my mouth. Like, you have no idea how long I waited for like a good Superman book. And this was the first one since I started collecting. Superman Unchained was okay, but it really wasn't like this book because this one was really true to the character and, to your point, very wholesome. I love that it went 40 issues plus, and I would still have it on my pull if they were still doing it. And that's not to take away from the new Superman run. The new Superman run is awesome. Only reason it's not on
Yeah.
my list is because it's not finished. And if it was on this list, I can't fault you for it because by the time it's over, it would be on this list. But yeah, the biggest thing that it did bring was the Super Sun stuff, which is the draw for some people. And I couldn't really care for that portion of it per se, but just to your point, the deep rooted values of Superman and how they portrayed that type of relationship and being a good father figure and
Yeah, it's
those
the
fun
same type
stories.
of it's a type of book you read with like a glass of milk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, just had a hard day's work. Gonna sit down and read, have a glass of milk, maybe say a prayer at my bedside, and then wake up and do it all over again.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm watching
Um,
Smallville right now, so I'm just feeling it.
you are
Yeah,
good for
we're
you.
like we're like 5 or 6 episodes deep. I forget they're 45 minutes. Shit
Yeah,
takes forever.
worth it though.
Yeah, it's good. It's wholesome.
Heck yeah. Love to hear that. Last book before we get to my number one, I guess, is Animal Man. Jeff Lemire wrote it. And this was one of the biggest reasons I still even have a pull for comics. Not only does it kind of mark the beginning of my collecting career, because alongside Batman, I did pick up Animal Man when that started with the new 52. But I didn't really know that comic books were that dark before reading this. Truly one of the best horror books in comics I've ever read. The best DC horror comic I think I've read since I've started collecting. And I'm glad they could do it with a character who already had a really, really cool run on similar stuff in the 80s with, was it the 80s? With Grant Morrison?
I think it was late 80s.
Yeah. Well, either way, I mean, just to kind of really flesh out a character like that, I think they knocked it out of the park. And if you're new to comics, I think it would catch you. It's pretty interesting.
Never read it, so I can't input too much, but I've only heard good things about it. And as a fan of the character, I would encourage to read anything good of the character. So, I mean, if you're not reading volume one, I haven't read it myself, but I could imagine you wouldn't go wrong reading this one. But with that, I've only got 2 more books on my list. Similar to what you said, it's not done yet, so I don't know if it really deserves to be on here since we can't say in totality it is. But World's Finest, Batman, Superman. I mean, what? We're 20 something issues in. I haven't read one that sucked. Very wholesome in the same way, in like a Silver Agey way. And who doesn't love the Silver Age? So, I mean, it's not done yet, but it's Mark Waid and I think it was Jorge Jimenez. Everyone's doing their best work. Each issue's a banger. It's got the perfect Superman Batman dynamic. Same with Robin. A lot of Silver Age incorporated elements. A lot of teams that are forgotten from the Silver Age get showcased here. Just a banger of a book.
Good word. Showcased. Kind of
Aha!
gives me showcase vibes.
It really does. I mean, we got the Metal Men, we got Metamorpho, we got the Doom Patrol. We get a little bit of everybody. We got Batmite, Mr. Mxyzptlk, whoever, dude. It's cool.
Yeah, that's another book too, just like the new Superman series, that by the time it ends, it'll definitely be on this list. It's just for sake of my principles. I didn't put it on my list, but again, could not fault you because by the time it's over, even if the ending isn't good, it'll still make this list because of how consistent the first 20 issues have been.
Facts. So does that leave us with one book?
I think that
Our
leaves us with
combined number
one
one?
book. I think we have a consensus here.
The one. Let them know.
Immortal.
Oh,
There we go. That's the
yeah,
energy we need.
yeah,
Hell yeah.
yeah. Kind of throwback to our wrestling introduction.
Bruce
No,
Buffer.
I mean, whew. I thought Al Ewing was going to be like the next biggest thing after this. Best horror comic I've ever read, even better than Animal Man, believe it or not.
Ooh.
Already a huge fan of the Hulk, so for the fact that they brought this twist to that character was awesome. Most unique thing I've ever read. Beautiful marriage of writing and art. Can't give this enough praise, especially for how long it ran as well. There's not a flaw in
Yeah.
it. It's like a 10 out of 10. I think not only is this the best comic book I've read in the last 15 years on my pull list, approximately 15, between all the stuff that we've reviewed for the pod, stuff I've read independently, it's like the book.
Yeah, I mean it's probably like top five for me, like period, like as a whole, like as a run. Because yeah, it's definitely the best thing I've read, like actively picking up. I mean, it's not even a contest to be honest. It just had a good mix of everything. There was like a level of mystique as you were getting it, month to month. You didn't know where it was going. You didn't know who was getting involved. The art was at first it probably wasn't like my normal preference, but like it fit the story, tone, and writing like perfectly. I don't think that book's the book it is without that art. And just the fact they kind of took Hulk back to his like 6 issue original series like roots in a way, along with the body horror, the immortality, the kind of just darkness and the kind of I don't know. It had a little bit of everything. It was just like the best experience. I looked forward to reading it every month, and I'm not a guy who really cares about picking up his pull that often anymore, and that's probably because this book ain't on it.
True. I think that sums it up. I mean, like, I wish I could say more about it, but like, there's nothing really to say. Just go pick up a trade or something if you don't already have it.
Yeah, if you trust our opinion at all, just go get this and you should have a good time.
And it's getting close to like Halloween time. Perfect time to pick this
Yeah,
up. Pick it up.
perfect time. Facts.
I don't get a
But
commission
with
out of this, but pick it up.
no, for real. But with that, I mean, that's our basically our top 10. I don't know if we actually said 10 books. I'm not counting, dude. I'll be real. But that's our combined list there. As you can see, we have differing opinions on how high or low they may be, but we generally agree on these same books. So if you're interested in any new reading material, if you weren't reading these already, you could always give these a look if you're not looking for any big time events from the past. But other than that, same old spiel here. Hit us up on CBJ Pod on Instagram, Comic Book Junkies on Facebook. If you've seen the logo, you know where to find us. CBJ Podcast, Comic Book Junkies Pod, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, everywhere. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, rate, review, subscribe if you don't want to miss an episode. If you want to reward us and push us out further in the algorithm, we appreciate it. We thank you all for listening. Thank you all for all the support you have given. And we will go ahead and we will be catching you next time.
All right, guys. Appreciate it as always.
Later.